Have you ever been scared to the core of your soul? What's the story? Sucked farther and farther out to sea on my bodyboard after sunset while surfing triple overhead waves, just as the fog bank rolled in obscuring the coastline and the direction I needed to swim to get home. Took a couple of hours in near dark open ocean to land a couple of miles up the coast, guided solely by the faint, faraway string of a few street lights and headlights that broke through the fog. Every splash I heard behind me was definitely a great white shark. I'd panic paddle whenever there was a big splash behind me. Again, I was in 20-foot seas. This happened constantly, until I could regain my comm center and try to drop my heart rate, the whole while thinking about how all that fast paddling I did probably just attracted a shark. This was near San Francisco, lost at sea in great white breeding grounds while looking like a seal on a winter night. In horrendous conditions. It's not easy landing on a tiny strip of beach when 12-foot waves are dumping onto dry sand and the current is ripping at a decent pace. 2 miles away, I landed safely. Slept like a baby, waking up screaming every 2 hours. This reminds me of the time I got caught in a riptide and got pulled out to sea. I didn't know you don't swim against it, so I tired myself and would have died, except the riptide suddenly reversed and I was sent back to shore at an insane pace. I don't even know if that's scientifically significant for a riptide to reverse, and I'm not religious, but something saved me that day and it wasn't myself. The end of the event was kind of crazy too, because the tide nearly sent me crashing into a rocky pier, but then I got sucked under and ended up under the rocks with a large enough air pocket to wait for the current to subside. Inside the little cave that saved my life was the largest starfish I've ever seen. Sea creatures are so neat. A rip will always carry you back to shore. The hard part is not panicking while being dragged out. I saw a show years ago, in Australia, where they dumped heaps of dye into different rips, at different locations, in different conditions, and the dye always got carried back to shore. Some got dragged a scary distance out, so even knowing this fact, I'd still find it crazy hard not panicking. This is literally my worst fear. Holy shit. Went into my then 2-year-old nephew's room to wake him up for the day. He was in his crib laying in a kind of weird posture, with his eyes wide open staring off at nothing. I figured he was awake already and thought, haha, he looks dead. To myself, and said, "Good morning, Matthew." And his eyes didn't move to look at me. I said, "Matthew?" And got closer to the crib, and the way he looked was worse up close, just unfocused dead eyes looking at nothing, body limp. I shook him gently, then harder, saying, "Matthew, Matthew, Matthew?" And when I yelled his name, his eyes suddenly focused and he smiled at me and stretched like he often does when he first wakes up. Little f***er was asleep with his eyes open. It was only a few seconds, but I swear my blood turned to ice. Was never so scared in my god life. No idea what caused it, and he never did it again. What the hell, Matthew? I sleep with my eyes open in the morning hours still. Did it when I was a kid and I guess never grew out of it. A broken bar. I'm 27 and still freak people out. My parents had a lovely experience with me, except I was 15 at the time. They'd signed me up for a surfing camp, wanted a week of peace at home, haha, and on the last night, the group I was with decided to pull an all-nighter to celebrate our last 24 hours together. Except, I'm not usually someone who can actually function on less than 6 hours of sleep. I managed to get through the night with a lot of energy drinks, but on the road back home, the fatigue set in and I didn't just fall asleep, I was completely out of it. Cue my parents looking to the back seat to figure out why their daughter isn't responding, only to be met with a slumped down girl, eyes open staring at nothing, mouth agape, not responding to touch or yelling. They panicked and stopped the car next to the highway, and I just happily woke up from some much-needed sleep, completely obvious to why my parents were crying. Good times. I was 11, maybe 12 years old. Dad worked late most nights, so I was home alone per usual. Home, however, was a ranch house far out of town in a Florida pine forest. It was late and dark. The doors were all French-style glass with no blinds or curtains. Outside those glass doors was only a hauntingly dark tree line, dimly lit by the moon. Leaving all the lights on and a TV gave some comfort, but this meant it was much easier to see in than it was for me to see out. On this night I had to get something out of the back room. This was our name for a garage that was absorbed into the house. The concrete floors and unfinished walls gave the room a cold air. As I'm searching for what I need, I glance up to see a large bleach-white figure standing outside the glass door. 6 feet tall with no head and no expression, just white hair draped in front like a ring girl. This was the night I learned there was another option besides fight or flight. It was freeze. I stood frozen in fear, as if the blood in my body just drained, unable to do anything until my brain recognized it was a horse's ass. The horse got out of its pen and was chilling under the carport, with its ass against the glass door. As I read your description of this terrifying-sounding creature, I felt your terror, until that last bit when I literally snorted. I'd be so mad at that horse. Thank God this is a good ending. I'm trying to sleep here. LOL, it's a strange one, because I had no actual, logical, reason to feel scared, yet I was terrified. I worked in a shop a few years ago and was tidying up at the front of the store near the windows and the entrance. I saw a man walk in, but I only saw his back when he came into the store. He had long hair and wore a leather jacket or leather trousers or maybe both. Can't remember. I thought nothing of it at the time. A few minutes later the same man was walking back towards the doors and I looked at him casually. He was looking at me too, so he ended up making eye contact. Instant goosebumps, shivers, whatever vibes he was giving off, it scared the shit out of me to the point that I couldn't move or even take my eyes off him. He slowly walked towards the doors while maintaining an eye contact. When he walked past me, he had this smirk on his face that was just purely evil. He proceeded to walk out of the store and turned right, and for a few moments he was covered by a huge sign in our window. Every cell in my body screamed at me to go, run. Even though he was actually leaving clearly, I still felt the need to get as far away from him as possible. But at the same time I felt like I didn't want to lose him out of my sight until I knew for sure he was gone. As he came back into view he was still looking at me. When he finally walked past our window I almost cried from relief that he was gone. He never said a word, never even approached me. All he did was looking at me, and it scared me more than anyone ever. I never saw him again and I hope I never will. This makes me feel less insane. I had a similar thing happen to me years ago when I worked in retail. I asked a guy if he needed any help, and when he turned to look at me I was instantly terrified of him. He looked normal. Nothing stood out to me as creepy or dangerous, but my mind was screaming at me to sprint in the opposite direction. It's absolutely the most scared I've ever been in my life. I had a similar thing happen to me at the hotel I worked at. I was a housekeeper and this guy popped out of his room the second I walked past. He said he was waiting for me and needed some things. Coolio. The part that's not coolio was his ice blue eyes that felt like they were literally piercing me. I had never felt so scared looking into someone's eyes before. I summed it up to me overthinking and got his stuff and went about my morning. Periodically he would step out of his room and glance down the hall at me and just stand there. I asked him the first time if he needed anything and he said no, he was just being nosy. The next couple of times I felt more uneasy, so I told a coworker. As he went to tell my manager about the guest and how I felt uneasy around them, the guy came out and followed me into the stock room. He was asking me all kinds of personal questions and then he did the creepiest thing. He said my flipping name. How did he know my name? Question mark. The only thing I could figure out was he got a hold of my task sheet when I was in a room or something. I didn't have a name tag and I swear I almost puked when he said my name. I managed to get us both out of the room without him touching me. But that's when he says he needs his room cleaned. I said I could do it once he goes out as we can't clean with guests in the rooms. He was very adamant that it didn't matter and he wouldn't tell anyone cause he had no plans to step out that day. You know, besides to watch me in the hallway. I have never been so scared of a random person in my life, and hope it never happens again. Also, I should say he was being extremely friendly and was apparently a frequent guest at our hotels, so he most likely was just a little overbearing, but holy moly, I'll never forget those eyes. I hope you enjoyed the video. Have you ever experienced a moment that shook you to your core? Something so terrifying it made the hair on the back of your arm stand up? If so, let us know in the comments below. As always, smash the like button, share, and subscribe for more Redditor reports. I hope you enjoyed the video. Have you ever experienced a moment that shook you to your core? Something so terrifying it made the hair on the back of your arm stand up? If so, let us know in the comments below. As always, smash the like button, share, and subscribe for more Redditor reports.